Hey everybody, this is Tavon Jackson, and today we're going to talk about the thrift savings plan and the different investments that you have within the thrift savings plan. The reason I'm making this video is a lot of people are in the G fund, they're in the life cycle funds, they're in the C fund, but they don't really know the difference between the funds. So what this Zoom call is going to be about is discussing all the differences between all the different accounts you can choose within the TSP. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a quick screen share and we're gonna talk about all of them. So as you know, there's 5 different funds that was originally created in the TSP. We had the G fund, the F fund, the C fund, the S fund, and the I fund. Back a few years ago, when you signed up to work for the federal government, you were automatically put into the G fund. And for many people, they were in the G fund their whole career. They never changed it. So the G fund is good. If we read it, pretty much it's the payment of G fund principal and interest is guaranteed by the US government. And this means the US government will always make the required payments. So with the G fund, this is the most conservative of all the funds. And its main goal is to ensure preservation of capital. So what that means is that they're just trying to preserve your money. This is not really used to build wealth. So if you're in the G fund, just know that your account's not really going to grow. Some people are okay with that, but just know that there's just as much risk as being too conservative than being too aggressive. So we look at the performance of the G fund. Since it's came out, we always want to look at the 3-year, the 5-year, or the 10-year. But on average, it's only doing about 2% a year. You know, for the year 2021, it's at 0.99. 1 year is 1.2%, 3 years 1.6%, 5 years 1.98, and 10 years 1.94. So if I were you, if you're 50 and under, you shouldn't have anything in the G fund because there's much more. There are a lot better investments that are out there that can give you that safety and a little bit more growth than this fund here. So just to recap, if you want to be conservative and you want your money to be similar to cash, the G fund is the way to go. But the problem is it's not even keeping pace with inflation. The next fund is the F fund. So the F fund is considered like bond funds, very low risk, but they're pretty much bonds. And as we all know, if we've been to a bank, that bonds do not pay what they used to pay. They used to pay 5, 6, 7% back in the day. Now you'd be lucky to get 2 or 3. But the problem with bonds is that they fluctuate based on interest rates going up. So right now, interest rates are really low. So therefore, when they eventually go up, the value of your bonds will go down. So we're actually in a bond market bubble, which is kind of concerning. If we look at their performance for the 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, and 10 year, it's still pretty conservative. It's averaging about 3% a year, which is barely keeping up with inflation. So I would say if you're 50 and under as well, you shouldn't have any G, you shouldn't have any F. So let's get to the money makers. All right, next one we have is the C fund. So the C fund is one of the best funds for growing wealth. And what you're invested in is what's called common stocks. So the C fund's objective is to match the performance of the Standard & Poor's 500. That's the S&P 500. And this is some of the top 500 companies in the United States. If we look at the performance there, year to date, it's up 15.9%. 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year, that looks really good. It's over 15%. And when we're looking at the top 10 companies in this fund, we have the leaders in the industry: Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Tesla, Google, Berkshire, Johnson & Johnson, JP Morgan. If we look at how it's breaking up, we got 27% in IT, 13% in healthcare. So if you're looking to build wealth, the difference between the people who come into our office with $1 million and the people who come in with 200,000 is not because the $1 million people put more money in. It's because they're in something that can actually win. Even if the market goes down, which we've seen it happen before, if you're putting money in every 2 weeks, when the market's down, you're buying low. So this fund right here, the C fund, I would highly recommend if you're looking to build wealth. The S fund, this is called the small cap fund. So pretty much the objective is to invest in small to medium companies not included in the top 500 in the S&P. So I like to think of the S fund. Think about it when the iPod first came out. Nobody really knew it was going to blow up like it did. When Apple first came out with the little iPod, you had no idea how large it was going to be. So the S fund invests in a lot of smaller companies that have the potential to be bigger companies. We look at the performance. 1 year did 42%. 3-year, 5-year, 10-year average is over 15%. Some of the top 10 companies, Square, Uber, Zoom, which is what I'm recording on now, DocuSign, Workday. So companies we've heard of before, but they're not as massive as the Amazon and the Apples of the world. And then the I fund, international. So what this fund invests in is companies in Europe, Australia, the Far East. And it's an excellent way to diversify your stock portion of your portfolio. Performance looks solid, not as high as the CNS over a 10-year period. But some of the companies here, Nestle, Toyota, a lot of the other companies I'm not familiar with. But the composition, it is international. So you see we got some companies in Austria, companies in Belgium, Denmark, France, a lot in the UK. It gives us global exposure. So the challenge was when people would sign up for the government, they were a little confused on which fund to choose. Should I choose the G fund? Should I choose the C fund? I'm not sure. So they came up with what's called life cycle funds, which is an easier way to pick all those 5 funds. So the way the life cycle fund works is that it's a mix of the G, the F, the C, S, and I. And it helps you design a portfolio in one fund so you don't have to pick. So the way it works is that you would pick on the left the year that you were planning on retiring. So for somebody that's retiring in 2025, it would be a lot more conservative than somebody retiring at 2055. So if we look at the breakdown, the 2025 fund has half the money in the G fund, which is safe, 6% in F, 22% in C, 5% in S, and 15% in I. So it's a very conservative portfolio. You see it recently just came out. So the 1-year returns about 14.45%, which is still really good. But just be mindful that 2020 was actually a really good year in the market. So that may be an outlier. But if we look at the 2055 fund, which is somebody retiring 34 years from now, you can see that we got a little in G, but we're all CS and I. So this allows you a very simple way to put together a portfolio of diversified accounts, G fund, CF, S, and I, without you having to think about it. So my thoughts on the TSP is that it's a good way to build wealth. It's low cost, but you have to make sure that you're in the right funds and you give yourself the ability to be able to win. One alternative that I have is that if you're in the G fund and you want safety, there's better options for you. So to give you an example, let me see here. Let's see, security, show you something. So, there we go. So to give you an example, there's an investment that's called a fixed index annuity. And this is for people who actually want the safety of the G fund, but they want to get a little bit more growth than the G fund. So what this does is that think of it as the stock market wrapped around an insurance policy. And whenever the market is negative, you do zero. The trade-off, though, is that when the market is positive, you don't get all the upside of the market, but you get some of it. So the reason why, if you are in the G fund, you should look into putting your money into something like this is because what would happen is that the G fund's only designed to do about 2% a year. But if we have the potential to do more than that and keep the same safety, it makes sense. So if we look at this chart here, this orange represents the stock market or the C fund. Everybody wants to be in the C fund. They just don't want the fluctuation that comes with it. So as you see, versus dealing with the roller coaster ride, this will be more of a staircase. The year 2000, 2001, 2002, that was the tech bubble. That was the Y2K scare when people were afraid of their money. Well, pretty much they were afraid that we went from 1999 to 2000. They thought the world was going to come to an end. And then that was also the tech bubble where all the tech stocks actually went crashing down. If you were in the market, you would have went down -10, -13, -23% for 3 consecutive years. In the fixed index annuity, you did 0. 2008, when the market went down -38%, in the fixed index annuity, you do 0. But the trade-off is that when the market was positive, you didn't get all of that 23%. You got some of it. But some of it's a lot better than being in the G fund. So for those of you who have a mix, let's say you're 59 and a half or older, maybe still working or retired, and you have money in the G fund because you don't want to lose it, it may make sense to transfer some of it to the fixed index annuity so that at least you can get the growth almost like a stock, but your principal is protected. So if anybody has any questions about their TSP or about how they allocate their funds, please reach out to me, schedule an appointment. My office is in Lanham, Maryland, 4640 Forbes Boulevard. And I hope everybody enjoys your evening. Thanks.